everyone. Happy Tuesday, and welcome to episode 98 of Heart and Mind with Dr. Dina McMillan. As you probably guessed, I'm Dr. Dina McMillan, and today we have a really interesting topic that's relevant to so many of you who are not in high drama relationships or are not really concerned about someone else's high drama relationships. But there are some quieter relationships that can be extremely hard on the people in them. And because they're not noisy, they don't get enough attention, but they really deserve it. Because being in one of these relationships is like slow drip poison. So I decided to talk about it today. And the topic of today is, what is your relationship really costing you that you haven't noticed yet? Think about that. Now, I promised you all, no more boring Tuesdays. As I keep telling you, I picked Tuesday because I noticed that Tuesdays were the day that all the restaurants gave specials to get people to buy because nobody was going out on Tuesday. Too much of the work week is still ahead of you. Not much happening, kind of dull, I'm just tired from my work day. Now you have something to look forward to. And I hope if you find anything about this show useful in your life, that you tell other people about it. Now, we're on live at 8 p.m. Eastern time. If you sign on any platform where you watch the show, you can actually ask questions, make comments in live time, and get your answers. If you're not able to make it live, no problem. Go to Daily Clout, Rumble, go to my X feed at Dr. Dina1, or go to YouTube and you can watch or rewatch every single one of these episodes. So welcome aboard. I'm glad to have you here. Now, why is my show so new and different? Because I'm a social psychologist. And social psychology is not just clinical psychology with everybody sitting in a group or whatever you may happen to think it is. We study the brain, how the brain learns. We study power dynamics. We look at influence and persuasion, manipulation, coercion, indoctrination, and even brainwashing. These are incredibly important topics. And we don't just study them. When I say study them, I've had people say, oh, you look at what happens in the world. Oh, yeah, but if you go to any university, they also experiment to see how you can change someone's beliefs and behaviors without them knowing that it was an outside force that was pulling the strings. And a lot of this is being used out in the real world. I don't want it to affect you. So that's the reason for the show and how we do things here. Now, speaking of coercion, speaking of manipulation, speaking of pulling your strings, please, everyone, get your own copy of the Pfizer papers. Pfizer did extensive studies on the vaccines. They knew about the side effects that are really hitting people hard now, but they knew about it all along. So because they were well aware before they ever released the vaccines widely, they went to court and tried to hide the studies on the vaccines and its effects on people for 75 years. And the court said no. So Dr. Naomi Wolf, Amy Kelly, a whole team of people went through all of those papers and trickled it down, deciphered it so a person without a medical degree can actually understand what was going on. Please get your own copy. It's crucial information because as of yet, this is like end of July 2026, nobody responsible for forcing people to get that vaccine has gone to jail. When things are not punished, it's almost inevitable they will be repeated. We want them not to be repeated. We want to keep people aware. So get your own copy of the Pfizer papers, and your support actually keeps the daily cloud in business so they can bring information about all sorts of topics out into the world, because evil loves privacy and secrecy. We want transparency. We want to know what's really going on that affects our lives. So please support the Pfizer papers. It's available at Amazon. You can just quickly go get your copy. Now, what are we talking about today? If you just signed in, you don't know this yet. What we're talking about, what is your relationship costing you that you haven't noticed yet? Oops. Every relationship gives you something and takes something away. If somebody were doing a tally, are you at profit or deficit? Are you giving more than you're getting? Or is it the other way around? Is it even around even? And so it's quite comfortable for both people. Both people are content and happy. Where are you? You need to know, this is really crucial information. And as I mentioned at the top, it's often ignored because people who are in, for instance, heavily imbalanced relationships, because they're not making a lot of noise about it, the topic itself is often ignored. And that is unfortunate, because we're going to talk about how important it is for you to know. You know, something I've been thinking about as we've been having these conversations is not just what's happening in our institutions or in the economy, but what people actually do with that awareness. Because I hear from a lot of people who can see what's going on, who understand the risks, the instability, the loss of trust. And yet, when it comes to their own savings, their retirement, they're still very much tied to those same systems. And it's interesting because it's not usually a lack of understanding. It's more a kind of hesitation, that space between knowing something and deciding to act on it. And I think that's something people look back on later with regret. So what I'm noticing more and more is that some people are starting to shift their thinking a bit away from just trying to predict everything and more toward asking very simply how exposed they really are. And for some, that leads them to explore ways of holding a portion of their savings outside of the traditional financial system, including in things like physical gold. I've been speaking with Augusta Precious Metals about this, and what I appreciate is that they really approach it from an educational perspective. They take the time to walk people through how it works, what to consider, and whether it even makes sense for their situation without any pressure. If you want to look into it more carefully, you can go to dailycloutgold.com or just text clout to 35052 and request Augusta's free information kit. It's just a way to understand your options more clearly so that if you do make a decision, it's coming from a place of clarity rather than hesitation. Okay, we're going to talk today about the hidden cost of relationship issues. And it's a shame if people do not pay attention to this. Just because something doesn't come sweep through your life and destroy everything all at once doesn't mean you aren't paying a very high price. In a way, this reminds me of when I was training to be able to teach people financial literacy. One of the things we emphasized in the financial literacy training was how much people accrue in debt, how much they accidentally spend on small purchases they make on a regular basis. I had a colleague who would have a bottled water that she'd drink while she was talking, and then she'd turn to the group and say, how many people buy a water or a soda every day when they go to work or when they go to class? And usually at least half the class would raise their hands. But before she had asked this question, she handed everybody an envelope with, okay, photocopied, bad photocopies, so nobody thought it was real, but $500. She said, she passed it around and said, Imagine what you could do with $500. And everybody was like, wow, oh, I could do this and I could do that. And then we moved on. So when she got to the water question, when she got to the soda question, she asked how many people, and half the people raised their hands. She said, remember that $500 you were passing around? That's what you're spending every year on water that you could actually get out of a tap or put in a jug if you wanted to have it filtered. Put in a filtered jug. That's $500 that you're spending just on water. And everybody would look at each other, small accidental purchases. That's exactly what we're talking about when you have relationship issues that are not dealt with. The hidden cost. They take something from you every single day, and over time, it seriously adds up. A lot of people, in fact, most people ask, am I happy? I would say most people aren't happy. They settle for, am I content? Am I okay? But the better question is, what is the relationship I'm in? What's it costing me? You ever thought about it? You ever asked yourself that? Now, if you have a question or you have a comment, please sign in on whatever platform you're watching this show live. And you can ask if you have a specific issue that you want dealt with. I'm more than happy to help you with it. And the reason we're talking about this, because unhealthy relationships rarely collapse overnight. They don't just fall apart. Somebody doesn't just come in and say, I don't love you anymore, I'm leaving, bye, and off they go out the door. No, usually what happens is that they erode quietly, gradually, almost invisibly, unless you watch information like the kind of information I share, where you can find things early and know what to do about it. Now, I want everybody, as we go through this, I want you to think about, okay, is there one relationship when I heard this topic? Is there one relationship that came to mind for me? Think about that for a second as we proceed. When credible doctors start paying attention to repurposed medications, it's worth asking why. Dr. Harvey Risch, former professor of epidemiology at Yale and now serving on the president's cancer panel, is helping lead that conversation. A new groundbreaking observational study from the Wellness Company analyzed the off-label use of ivermectin and mebendazole in nearly 200 cancer patients being treated by licensed doctors across cancers like breast, prostate, lung, and colon. And the results are hard to ignore. After 6 months, 84% of patients experienced clinical benefit, including stable disease, tumor regression, or no evidence of disease. This is not lab data. This is real-world patient experience. Dr. Risch, chief epidemiologist at the Wellness Company, called it an exciting signal deserving serious scientific investigation and more accessible, lower cost cancer care options. That's why the Wellness Company makes it easy to access an ivermectin plus mebendazole formula using medications that are FDA approved for other indications and are being studied for additional use. It's doctor prescribed and USA compounded, designed to support patients exploring these emerging approaches under medical guidance. Ordering is simple and fully digital. Just fill out a quick intake form and a licensed doctor reviews it. Then your prescription ships directly to your door. Head to dailycloudhealth.com and use the code DailyCloud to save up to $60 off plus free shipping. Okay, got your relationship in mind? The one you're thinking about where you're wondering if there's an unconscious cost you're paying? Or perhaps you may even be wondering, is there an unconscious cost the other person is paying? Because of how I've been lately, or something I'm going through, or what I've been ignoring, perhaps. What happens is this: by the time most people realize something's lost, usually they wait until it reaches crisis point. And then getting back to the point where you can actually fix it is really, really tough. Most people just say, oh, it's all too hard, and they want to break it up. I would rather show people where there are problems early, so it's still able to be adjusted and fixed if there's will on both sides. Now, keep in mind, no relationship involving two or more people can be fixed unless everyone involved is willing to put in consistent effort. You cannot fix a relationship if you are not the cause of the problem. You cannot fix a relationship even if it's shared responsibility, if one person's willing to do the work and the other one's not. Here are some of the hidden prices of relationship problems: deeply imbalanced. And remember what I've said in my circles of intimacy and the new products that I've developed. A deeply imbalanced relationship causes a lot of pain. It is a slow drip poison. It's just a slow drip poison. Don't underestimate it. You have manipulation. There may be toxic factors, or it could just be it doesn't fit. It doesn't make you happy no matter how much you try to convince yourself. If you wait, if you don't say, okay, I'm going to assess where I am and work on this, it can be too hard to fix it. And keep in mind, the most expensive relationships aren't always the loud ones. They aren't always the ones with the big dramatic gestures, somebody throwing something, throwing a tizzy, acting, making a scene. Slowly becoming less yourself is also a horrible cost. Having a demanding partner that demands that you change this and adjust this. Oh, come on, or punishes you if you don't. And you look up and you're like, who am I now? I'm nothing like the person I used to be. They force you through either direct means or manipulation into giving up your interests, into giving up your hobbies. You're allowed to make fewer decisions. If you don't go along with what they want, it's just high cost, high drama, big problems. You find yourself apologizing all the time, even though you weren't wrong. And of course, most of the time in relationships like this, you're never allowed to tell them what they're doing wrong. Now, Frank Brescia, my most loyal member, who always signs in, come on, you guys, you can sign in too, said, I've had 2 ex-work colleagues tell me that they would never speak to me again. Actually, I hardly kept in contact with them anyway. It was over some posts. Commented on a news site, no great loss. Well, that's also a hidden cost. A lot of people are finding that if you don't agree with the status quo, if you don't agree with mainstream news, for instance, a lot of people are really critical of you. I found somebody made a comment on my Facebook post saying, don't listen to anything she has to say because politically she's conservative. Seriously? I would never say that about somebody who was more left-leaning than I was. If they had something valuable to say, I'll take it. He said, I would like to fix a relationship with one of my nieces, but she also said she would never speak to me again. You can't fix anything if you won't speak to each other. And I mentioned to you about a sibling. That was the reason that I spent 18 months in research putting together the concepts that were in the circles of intimacy. 18 months of research, followed that up, revisited it again a few years later, added more research, added more concepts. And it is the basis for one of the products that I'm going to talk to you about that I released this weekend. So much time, effort, and energy and research. This was not AI created. This was good old-fashioned research, experience, trying it out, seeing what worked. And it's highly effective, but I actually came up with it because I was having trouble with one of my siblings, not loud drama problems. I'm talking about severe imbalance in the relationship. And it was causing me to be so uncomfortable, to feel so used, to feel so hurt. But again, I've had siblings that won't talk to me because politically we're different. I can't fix anything with them if they won't speak to me. And that's always the case. If people won't, nothing can be fixed on one side. I have always been open to fixing everything because I didn't break it. I don't demand that they think like I do. You know, that's what freedom means, is freedom to disagree. As long as we have the same fundamental values about treating other people decently, being a person of your word, you know. I've told you before about my very left wing friend who's a professor. Politically, we're at opposite ends and we adore each other. We work well together. We have a lot of really core common values about helping the public and making the world a better place. It's all good. So people who won't speak to you, yeah, sometimes you just have to write them off, but it's a shame, isn't it? What happens also if you're in an unhealthy relationship that's quietly painful? Again, think slow drip poison, okay? You're not growing as a person. It's eroding who you are and how you think and your self-value. You're always walking on eggshells. You feel emotionally tired after interacting with them because you're constantly looking to them. Are they going to be okay with what I said or did? Or are they going to throw a temper tantrum and cause a lot of problems? Are they going to punish me? You may feel guilty or inadequate without knowing why. Little barbs that they may make or things they say behind your back. You may be in a relationship where you're giving more and receiving less. That was part of my problem. I was giving a lot, but getting almost nothing at all. You'll find yourself being really emotionally exhausted with these imbalanced relationships, and your self-worth quietly erodes. You start on a subconscious level saying, you know, what is wrong with me that I'm not worth expending some energy on? I'm not worth listening to. I'm not, all they want me for is an applauding audience. Why am I not worth more than that? You accidentally reward selfish behavior because if you want somebody's approval so much that you'll accept any kind of imbalance, if they do something that's not good, you'll still help them. You'll still be there for them. You won't let them suffer the consequences of their actions because you want their approval and their affection. You're not really helping them by doing that, and you're certainly not helping yourself, and you lose your sense of identity because the person you are with them is not who you really are. Does anybody else besides Frank, besides me, have a relationship like that? Think about it for a second. You've probably heard the headlines by now. RFK Jr.'s pharma audit team has been digging into some uncomfortable questions about common medications, including claims around Tylenol and neurological development. Now, regardless of where you land on that debate, here's the part that should make everyone pause. Multiple studies have raised concerns about acetaminophen, the active ingredient in Tylenol, and its effect on something called glutathione. Glutathione is your body's master antioxidant. It protects your cells, your brain, and your nervous system from damage. And when glutathione levels drop, your nerves don't fire the way they should. Signals weaken, repair slows down. That's when people start feeling that burning, tingling, numbness, the kind of nerve pain that quietly takes over daily life. And here's the bigger issue. Tylenol isn't the only thing that drains antioxidants from your body. Ultra-processed foods, environmental toxins, chemicals in hygiene products, plastics most of us use every single day. All of it adds up, and most solutions for nerve pain, pills, creams, TENS machines, and so on, they try to mask the pain, but they don't replace what your nerves are actually missing. Now, there's some good news. There are specific minerals naturally occurring straight from the earth that help restore nerve strength, protect nerve cells, and calm that constant buzzing, burning, and numbness. Scan this QR code or go to myprimal.life/HMNERVE to find out exactly what those minerals are, how they work, and why some people are calling them miracle grow for your nerves. Because when your nerves get what they need, they don't just calm down, they power back up. So, looking at this topic, as I said, this is a really underserved topic. The price of your relationships. Most of us just go through life day to day. We don't really think about how healthy are my relationships unless you get to the point where you're absolutely miserable. By that point, it's really hard to fix it. Why don't we look earlier? Most of us don't know what to look for, and that's what we're here to talk about today. And I'm going to ask for some help in this topic because it is an interesting topic, because there's not enough talk about this topic. I'm asking for help from my friend from Australia, Melinda Richards. She's a successful author. She is an influencer, former talk show host, and it is now winter in Australia on Wednesday, but she made time in her busy schedule to come and talk with us. So any questions for her, also don't hesitate. Feel free. Hello, Melinda. Thank you for joining us on the show. Thank you.
Oh, thanks for having me. Thank you. It's just a great topic. Oh my goodness.
And you know so many people. Melinda's a bit of a social butterfly, so she knows so many people. So one of the things that happens when you're around a lot of people is that you get to see the impact of relationships that are significantly off balance, even if they're not high drama. And most of us don't think there's anything you can do about it. But this part I've talked to her at length about before. I've talked to you, audience, about this, giving more and receiving less. When you're in a relationship where you're doing most of the work, it stresses you out, and it starts to affect your physical health over time. You also...
it's really funny. Yeah, it's funny, Dina, because I just came back from a girls' weekend, and it is amazing to see how many particularly women, and I'm not a gender-focused person, as you know. We just had a group of friends who went away together, and it is amazing how many people bring up exactly what you're talking about today, these little whinges that women have about their partners and what's going on. And it's absolutely fascinating that they're not able to really deal with it.
Well, also, I would say too, one of the reasons with my new product line, I was not just thinking about women. I want everybody to have healthy relationships. But I also have noted that for men, unless something is big and significant, or they're with someone that they feel they can be vulnerable to, men often suffer in silence. They just quietly suffer. They just focus their energy on sports. They'll focus their energy on work. They'll do something else and not address something that's causing them a lot of problems. There's also that sunk cost effect. The more time you spend on a relationship that is not making you happy, the less likely you are to try to get out of it. You're like, well, we've been together this long. I don't want to just say that after 10 years that I should just walk away. Well, if you know me, if you've watched this show before, you know that the first step with me is never just walk away. It's always to look to see if you can do anything to fix the situation before you walk away. But some relationships, if it is causing you pain and distress and the other person is not willing to work on it, that gives you a decision to make. And at that point, I would advise walking away. What happens too, here's something most people don't think about. When you are in one of those unhealthy dynamics, you start to normalize it. So healthy relationships become harder to recognize. What you're in becomes normal for you. And quiet resentment simmers beneath the surface. And so anything done is done under duress for the person rather than just because you wanted to do it. Oh, Nettie's back. Nettie hasn't been here for a while. Hi, welcome back. So, what do you think about this? Okay, here's something I really want your opinion, Melinda. One of the clearest signs of an unhealthy relationship it isn't how much you give, it's whether your giving is creating greater balance or greater imbalance in your relationship. What do you think about it?
Well, I think that all relationships are probably a little bit imbalanced. I think you do probably always have a slightly stronger personality and a slightly more compliant personality, or a quieter person. But I think it's the quiet ones that really need to sit back sometimes and say, am I getting what I need to get out of this relationship? A lot of people are actually content for the imbalance, but I think that everyone's got to really do some soul searching sometimes and decide what are they content with and what aren't they with whatever balance or imbalance is happening. It's really, really hard to dive into yourself sometimes and front up and admit to yourself what's going on, because in life, and we all know this from the way that we face out society. In life, we've all got face and we've all got an ego. And occasionally when we delve down inside ourselves and really admit a few things to ourselves, that kind of bruises our ego a little bit. And if something's really imbalanced, if you admit that and come out and really say, well, listen, I'm not really happy with it anymore. Sometimes you can be fearful that you're going to lose face. You're going to lose face with your friends, yourself even, and just wonder, well, how did I let it get like this? And I think the really good thing about what you're saying today, Dina, is don't ever get yourself to a point where you have to sit up and go, well, how did I get here? I think at the end of the day, what's really great about having these conversations is you're going to head stuff off at the pass. And you're going to say to yourself, well, hey, listen, I'm not going to go down to this pathway anymore, because I've started walking down this way. I'm seeing a pattern of behavior, and we need to nip it in the bud before you get so far down the pathway that it's just too late to turn back.
Well, one of the things that I'm going to be talking about my new product line, which I'm really excited about because it's part of a whole new system, because I don't want people to just be dependent on me. I want you to be able to have the knowledge in your head and in your hands and on your computer and on your device so that you can assess what's going on in your own life, and you can come to me if you want to. I will always have I'll have an open conversation. I'll have other tools for you, but I want you to learn how to do this so that your life is healthier. And one of the things you're going to see with the tools that I'm going to talk about towards the end of the show is that when you use these tools, you may find out that the relationship is imbalanced because of what you're demanding from your partner. So sometimes you'll have a situation like I was in with my sibling where it was me doing all the giving. But what happens if you're doing all the demanding?
Yeah.
And the other person doesn't want to make a fuss, or perhaps they're dependent on you, or perhaps you have a bad temper and you react very badly if they say no. You can also figure out if you're doing something wrong, and there's nothing stopping you from saying, let's have a conversation. I realize I've been making all of these demands on you, and I haven't really been asking how you feel about it. Can we have a conversation? Because this relationship is both of us, and I want you to be happy. There's nothing stopping you from doing that, because what happens over the time is that the person, even if they don't express it, will begin to resent you. If you're making all those demands, if you feel like you can just say, do what I say, they're going to be frustrated. They may become embittered. They may become emotionally distant. And you're like, why are they acting like this? Let's ask the questions before it gets to the point where you end up splitting up the relationship. So let's also look quickly, and I want everybody's opinion. Okay, so Nettie, Frank, anybody else, Roscoe, if you're here, anybody else that wants to sign in, let's look else at what bad relationships can cost you. And when I say bad, again, we're not necessarily talking about abuse. We're not talking about something where people would stop and say, oh, that poor person in that relationship, they're so mistreated. We're just talking about a relationship that has something significant enough that it's noticeable to one or more parties in the relationship, and it's corrosive. So that if it isn't fixed over time, it's going to get worse and worse and worse for at least one person um, in the relationship. Now, Nettie asked about red flags before getting married. Now, I'm not going to talk about that today because we have a different topic, but I should tell you that with my new business, the McMillan Method, I have 2 additional assessment tools that are going to be in development in August. And one of them is specifically for people who are going to be getting married. I'm going to call the tool with this ring. And it's going to be a quick little test that you can take to assess the health of your relationship before going into the commitment phase. Again, looking at it early enough to fix it if you choose to do so. So let's look at what else can be lost if you're in a relationship that is corrosive. However that happens, you lose your confidence, your energy, you waste a lot of time, you can lose opportunities. And one way you can lose opportunities is linked to your confidence. If you're with somebody who's not treating you well, if you're doing all the giving and not the getting, when you have an opportunity at work, for instance, to step forward and perhaps go for a promotion, are you going to be confident enough to ask for it? Are you going to feel that you're worthy of being recognized and acknowledged for what you do well when you're not getting it at home? Or, to be honest with you, the unhealthy relationship we're talking about could be at work. The tools I've come out with also have one specifically for unhealthy work relationships, because most of us spend so much time at work. And the cost, Frank says your bank account. Oh my God, yes. Your financial security. Aha, I read your mind. Okay, financial security. Your reputation. Because sometimes when you're let's say you're in a relationship where you're the person making all the demands, the other person is just quietly miserable. And then they start talking to all your friends about how miserable you make them. And so your friends are all starting to treat you differently, and you can't figure out why. Your friendships, you can lose friendships behind this. If you wait until it gets to the point where you break up, Melinda and I have talked about this before, how the world treats you when you get a divorce. Often it's not just the family assets that are divided, so are the friendships. So you can lose that. Your physical health, if you're not sleeping well, it has an impact on your health. And that can be extremely expensive. Now, here's something else I want everybody to pay attention to. And this is why you want to listen to a social psychologist about this. The dangerous psychology of adaptation. We, as humans, will adapt to almost anything. So whether we're talking about a corrosive, imbalanced relationship that's making you unhappy, or we're talking about a relationship that's actually classified as abusive, if you don't get out of it and you tell yourself you have to stay, your brain thinks it's doing you a favor and it's going to adapt. Even if you're unhappy, how many people have spent their whole lives in unhappy marriages because they never actually weighed up what was wrong and determined to fix it? Frank says one of the joys of being retired, I don't have to deal with the problems of work relationships. Well, the rest of us do. So it certainly matters, but realize how much our brains will adapt to things. Because our brain is not trying to make us happy. That's not something it's seeking. It's trying to make our lives predictable. That's a survival mechanism, and that's the default where our brain goes to. And that's why leaving unhealthy relationships, you're like, why do you stay with that person? Why are you still friends with that person? Why are you doing this? Because you know how they're going to do. You know that saying, better the devil you know? That's how our brain works. If this person is awful but predictable, your brain will often try to dissuade you from walking away. It will amplify your fear about what will happen when you leave. That's why it is so crucial to get objective perspectives on what's going on and what you need to improve your situation. You have to get objective situations. And this is, to me, is one of the biggest fears. Being in a relationship with someone who quietly resents me. I don't know, any of you feel like this? If I found out that somebody never told me that something I was doing was really bugging them, that they felt I was taking advantage of them, that they felt that I wasn't appreciating them, if they resented me, it would make me so sad. Frank says some people stay in bad relationships because the other person may become violent, and that is true. But far more people stay in bad relationships that don't involve violence because it's something known, and they're choosing the known over the unknown, even when the unknown makes them miserable. But what about this whole resentment thing? I know you have an opinion on this, Melinda. I know you. What do you think about this? Do you know people that are in relationships where every time you get one of the partners together or the friend by themselves, all they do is say bad things about the other person because they have so much resentment they're holding in, but they won't.
Yeah, it's one thing. I think what we all need to do in our lives is, everyone needs to not trash talk the people that they're in relationships with, either friendships or, it's about kind of, whole bitching behind the other person's back kind of thing. I have a really strong code on that. I really don't like throwing people under the bus. If I'm in a relationship that I'm not happy with, that's actually just as much my problem as it is the other person's problem. I've always had that attitude. And as you get older, you are able to really understand life a lot more clearly. And I think that age does bring the wisdom of who you want in your life and who you don't want to be in your life. But to go around and talk about people and to be irritated and resentful, I mean, sure, you've probably got one or two people you want to unload to, your best friend. You've got a couple of people you need to confide in. I'm not saying not to do that. But I think that if you're spilling out bitchiness and resentment, it really is time to take a look in the mirror and understand if that's who you are. And if it's not who you are, then you need to take steps to either leave or let the other person know that you resent them. And I have actually done that once before in my life. I have actually said to a person who shall remain nameless, that, you know what, I actually really resent you for the things that you've done here. And I'm expressing that. And it takes a lot of maturity, it takes wisdom, and a lot of that just comes with age. I mean, I'm kind of older now, so I would never have been able to do that 20 or 30 years ago. And I think this is where bringing younger people into this conversation before they start relationships, when they're early on in their relationships, and when they're really moving through them, because I think I wish I'd had a lot of the tools when I was a lot younger to be able to stand up to someone and say, hey, you know what? I've got to stand up for myself. I'm letting you know that I've actually built up some resentment for this pattern of behavior. But as I said, it's not an easy thing to do, and it's got to be worth it. It's got to be a person, I think, that you want to keep in your life and that you really want to work hard on. And I think we also have to front up to sometimes we just have to sort of let people go and then mourn that and say goodbye. I'm letting you go, and you mourn it for a little while and then you move on. And certainly in the last decade, I've been that maturity of age gives me a greater ability to be able to do that as well.
Well, Nettie asked, when you told the person how you felt, how did they react? She wants to know.
Well, you know what? They were a little bit stunned at first, and they were just sort of staring into space. But I had felt that this relationship was worth working on because this person was a really decent person and is a decent person. And so they thought about it and then nodded their head. And, look, giving and receiving feedback is really, really tough. And I think you've got to kind of know your audience as well in life when you're doing anything like that. I would never have said anything if I didn't believe this person was able to receive it. And there's not many people in the world that are actually very good at receiving and giving feedback. Look, I get feedback all the time because I'm out in the world a lot and I'm with a lot of different stakeholders. I'm always getting feedback. And it builds resilience, and it makes you appreciate, all of your strengths and weaknesses. And I think when you get feedback, being able to stop and listen to it and try to be, and this person that I gave it to is a self-improvement person. That's how I knew that they could take it. I knew that they were trying to improve their life. They're trying to be a better person as they journey through life. And they're the people you've got to surround yourself with, because let's face it, none of us are perfect. But if we can surround ourselves with people that are interested in being better and knowing better and doing better all the time, and actually not closing themselves down, but opening themselves up to, all types of people and information, I think they're the people you got to try and target as well. And knowing yourself is part of that journey.
Well, another question. Are you still friends with the person that you said this to?
Absolutely. Absolutely, I am. Very much
I've had
so.
somebody do that to me where I was making jokes and whatever, and they said, that really hurts me when you do that. When you make these comments, It really hurts me. And I was taken aback because, of course, I would never intentionally hurt this person. So I stopped doing it. And it's hard to hear that you're making a mistake. But the other option would...
I mean, we all have, as I said, we don't want to lose face. We all have egos. We have front facing, as Shakespeare said, we wear many faces and we have many journeys through life. And it's the front face to the society that we live in that we're trying to nurture and protect. It's our identity. This is all complicated stuff. And if you want to step away from someone, you've actually got to admit, well, you know what, there's a lot of layers to moving away from a friend, from a husband or a wife, from a sibling. It's these are things that affect your well-being. Absolutely.
Well, I also think, as I said, I'm the type of person, I almost think like somebody from the Great Depression. My first step to seeing an issue isn't, throw that away and get a new one. It's, let's see what's wrong. First of all, it's hard to fix something unless you're really specific on what's wrong. In fact, I have one of my other sisters. I have lots of siblings. So one of my sisters was living with me. And when I would date somebody, sometimes she'd come back and say, there's something about this guy I just don't like. Yeah. And I was like, that doesn't help me even a little. So I started teaching her a lot of my social psychology, because I said to her, if you're not specific, I can't tell if your trepidation is based on they remind you of somebody from your past, or I need to know if it's a legitimate gripe. And I'm going to just teach you some simple things to be able to tell me, because I do value your opinion and I don't want you to stop telling me. So what happens?
The thing about a lot of that is that you have to listen to that as well. I didn't listen to that once, a very, very long time ago, well over 30 years ago. With my first husband, I had one of my best friends pull me aside when she first met him. And she is very, very intuitive with people. I trusted her implicitly. And she put her hands on my shoulders, and all she did is shake her head, just gently shake her head. This is not the guy for you. Didn't say anything more than that. Just said, it's not right. And and so many people find it hard to articulate because they're not trained and it's difficult to find the words. And it was very hard for her to say that to me, because I was just sort of head over heels. I just thought he was the greatest thing since sliced bread. I was completely wrong, and she was 100% right. She was seeing something that I couldn't see because I was so clouded. My judgment was so clouded. I was allowing a lot of things to really prevent me from diving in and quickly asking some of these critical questions that you're asking through your program, through your programs, Dina. And I made a mistake, and it was a big one. And I married that guy, and I divorced him, but I spent too long. I spent too long with him. And it's not that I regret it, because life is regrets are, it's a bit of a waste of time. But what I did do is I looked at myself very deeply and thought, what was it about me at that time? I was just so young. And I just wish I'd had someone or something to quickly lay it out for me and go, you know what? At the end of the day, you were in a relationship before you got married. You saw the signs. They were right there, staring at you, right in front of you. And it's all the things that you were saying earlier about the reasons why you don't leave. And it's very, very powerful. And I think life's choices, it would have been good to probably avoid that mistake. It was a mistake, and it probably would have been good for my life to avoid it. However, that marrying him then led me down a different pathway, and then I've ended up having an absolutely brilliant life. And had I not done that, it's all interconnected. But I'm just saying that these things are there laid out in front of you. You just need to know to ask the right questions and to take a step back just for a minute and do the things that you're saying to do. It's powerful to do that.
Well, that's one of the reasons I said I have some clarity tools through my new company, the McMillan Method, that are going to be released, that are already released this weekend. But the next set coming up in August is going to be 2. And one of them is going to be with this ring. I'm going to be releasing a clarity tool to help you understand if there are issues in the person you're potentially choosing to marry before you marry them. And also doing another clarity tool for abusive relationships, using my Unmasking the Abuser information, because everything I do, I keep working to find the simplest, most effective way to put the information in other people's hands so that they can use it I don't want to be the person standing over you saying, yes, I'm so smart, here you go. I want to give you something you can use yourself, that you can put your information in, you can get the answers, you can make the choices. I know for myself, everything I do is what I wish I would have had when I was 18. And in fact, one of the tools that I have, I actually tested them out already on an 18-year-old. And she found them incredibly useful. And this could save you years of unhappiness. But what happens with so many people, if they're in a relationship and their brain is telling them it's not that bad, especially, again, if it's corrosive. If you're in a relationship where it's imbalanced, or everything has to be on the other person's terms, or if it's like just slow drip poison, but your brain says it's familiar. You know how this person responds. Why would you put yourself out in a world where everything is unknown when you can know how to handle this situation? So your brain talks you into staying, and then over the time, you just don't even argue. You just do what's necessary to survive in the world that you feel you're stuck in. And you do it not because things are improved, but because you think you can't change anything. And I'm here to tell you that sometimes you can't change situations, relationships that are unhealthy. But guess what? Sometimes you can. Woohoo! Sometimes you can. And that's one of the things. I know I'm a very romantic, hopeful person, but I'm also very down to earth. I wouldn't tell you that if I didn't see it, because I'm not helping you to lie to you. My integrity is too important to me. My principles are too important. Now, again, Nettie, here's something. Early warning signs matter. Melinda said she saw signs when she was dating this guy that were going to be serious problems if she married him, and she did it anyway. The problems don't start when the relationship becomes unbearable. That's really late in the process. Usually our relationships tell us the truth much earlier if we're paying attention. So from now on, that's another thing you'll see as a consistent theme throughout all of my work. I keep telling people, pay attention early in the process. Don't wait until everything becomes so severe before you say, you sit around, you go, or like with me, go to the hair salon where everybody's deconstructing their relationships bit by bit and they know all of this. Well, wait a minute. So much of this, you mentioned it 6 months ago when you first started seeing this guy and said A, B, C, and D. Why didn't you react then? Why didn't you tell yourself, let me just put a little distance to see if this is going to be a problem? No, you collapsed yourself into the relationship and now it's huge. Because here's another thing, I have to be honest, and Melinda, you mentioned this, the cost of ending a relationship versus the cost of staying. Ending an important relationship can be extremely painful. It can be expensive. We talked before that you don't just divide the house and the furniture, you have to divide your friends. I had a relationship where I was engaged, not married, but when we broke up, I was heartbroken because I'd become very close to his family. And losing him meant losing them too.
Yeah.
But staying.
A lot of people stay for those reasons. I knew someone years ago that stayed with someone because of their family, not because of them. It's incredible. I mean, I've always said this too, it's so much easier to get into a relationship than it is to get out of it. Maybe not so much friends, but, work is sort of a forced thing. But romantic relationships, it's pretty easy to get into. But boy, is it hard to get out of. And boy, is it hard to manage. I mean, in this world that we live in now, people are taught at a very young age to be very narcissistic, very judgmental. I mean, that's sort of the woke characteristics of the last couple of decades have seeped through a couple of generations of people. And I think we have to kind of unwind a lot of those indoctrinations and those bits of brainwashing that people get, through this sort of woke narrative that's permeated everywhere. And they bring narcissistic traits into their relationships. And I think people just don't even know how to deal with it now. And I see so many people that break up, and it's very, very hard to make relationships work. I think it's a little bit harder now because of the background societal issues. I think it is challenging.
Well, I think we have two issues. Number one, you have the people who are brought up to be so self-serving and selfish in their relationships, and unless everything is exactly what they want, they just toss it away. Yeah. And then other people who will stay in a relationship that is such an ill fit, no matter what, and they waste years of their lives. They have children with this person, or again, you'll understand. Think about it for a second. Most of the time when people talk about relationships, most of the time social scientists, influencers talk about relationships, they forget to talk about your work relationships. But most of us spend most of our waking hours during the week at work, and those relationships are real. And even when you're talking about a breakup, you have a terrible boss or a colleague that is causing you so much distress. So you decide, you tried to fix it, you went to HR, you talked to your boss, nothing you did worked. And you said, for my own peace of mind, for my own self-esteem, I need to work somewhere else. This is not a good workplace for me. You find a new job. But you had actually made real friends at that workplace, and now they don't speak to you anymore because they'll get bullied by the person who stayed behind. I mean, it's complicated. It makes more sense to fix everything you can as early as possible. And I have this mindset in real life. I was actually complimented by my car service people, because every time that little key came on saying it needed to be serviced, I immediately called them and took my car. They said, "You have the most consistently serviced car." I said, "I don't want to wait until something breaks. I want this car well maintained the whole time." And when I left Australia, because of course in Australia they drive like the English, so the steering wheel is on the right. So I sold my car, but I got really good value for my car because it was so well taken care of, because I fixed it before it broke. And I want people to do that with their relationships, because staying has its own price too. If you're in a relationship where it's unhealthy and either you The other person won't fix what's broken, or maybe it's just a bad fit. Try to make the breakup that I can also teach you how to break up in a way that it leaves the least damage behind. There are ways of ending a relationship that leaves the least amount of damage, and I really am an advocate for that. But I don't believe in throwing something valuable away the first time something goes wrong. Please let the first step be trying to fix it, because this is what happens if you stay in a relationship, in work or personal. You have more stress on your body, which is going to make you age more poorly. They're more distance from the person you used to be. You're going to normalize the unhealthy behavior because you're going to have to rationalize staying in something where you're not happy. You'll spend more time believing things will somehow improve, but it never quite happens, or it happens only as a temporary gesture. Sometimes the best decision is the hard decision, and you just got to get out of it. I know change can feel terrifying. Again, please don't let it be the first decision unless you see really toxic warning signs at the beginning of a relationship. If that's the case, don't hesitate, get out. But human beings, we naturally compare today's certainty with tomorrow's uncertainty, and a lot of people find tomorrow's uncertainty really scary. And it is. Just close your eyes and jump, or get information from someone like me who can help you get through it. It's still better than staying somewhere where you're miserable. And I needed to put this. Many people regret ending a relationship, but more people regret waiting another 5, 10, or 20 years before doing so. Again, my suggestions, this is from Dr. Dina: accurately assess what's wrong, fix it. If possible, that requires effort on both sides. End it if it's costing too much, or if the methods to fix it are just completely ineffective. But the number one, don't underestimate the necessity of number one. You have to see clearly what's wrong. Clarity gives you better options. Now, I'm going to give you a couple of questions to take away with you today. Do I feel more like myself after spending time with this person, or less? Am I becoming stronger or smaller? Can I disagree safely? Do I feel respected? Am I carrying most of the emotional work? Have I normalized behaviors that once would have shocked me? What has this relationship already cost me? And what will it cost if nothing changes? Because the greatest losses in life aren't always dramatic. They're subtle. Confidence, peace, hope, dreams, time, health, and identity. And then perhaps the saddest loss of all, the version of yourself that you would have become if you'd recognized the warning sign sooner. Now, realize every relationship you have, personal or professional, sends you an invoice. It takes time, peace of mind, confidence, emotional energy, health, trust, freedom, opportunity, joy, identity. Are you in the profit, or are you paying more than you're getting back? And the healthiest relationships don't leave you wondering what you've lost. They help you become more of who you were capable of being all along. If you don't feel stronger, faster, better, more hopeful about what you can do, then your relationship is not healthy. And this is the last thing I want to leave you with as far as this topic is concerned. If somebody watched your relationship like a documentary for 1 week, who would they say is doing most of the emotional work, you or the other person? And if your life were a business, would you invest in this relationship? Things that make you go home. Now, I just want to leave you on a high note because my new products are available. The McMillan Method is now out. What I am offering you: clarity, understand what's really happening in your relationships; insight, know what the results mean; action, the tools offer you practical strategies to improve your outcomes. You want to know what to do? This is included. And here so far is the complete McMillan Method connection. You can find it at www.themcmillanmethod.com. And I just want to give you a quick little look about what we're offering.
Guess what? Something new is here. A simple way to uncover what's been harming your relationships. The McMillan Method Clarity Tools are world-first online tests. They're quick, easy, and effective. They highlight relationship issues you may not recognize. They're completely private, and your answers are immediate. They let you assess family, friendships, romance, or workplace relationships. Replace confusion with clarity. The McMillan Method. See clearly, choose wisely, live better. Guess what?
These are brand new tools that have never been done before. Nothing has ever allowed you to spend between 5 and 10 minutes and figure out what's going on in your relationships. But it took me so long. This is 20 years worth of work. But I had to boil it down to something where you could get a quick, easy answer that was actually accurate. So it's an HTML format. So once you get your answer and you get your score, screenshot it, because when you close it, it starts all over again. So you could sit one rainy afternoon and assess every relationship you have with the same test. I'm not going to make you buy a new one every time you use it. I wanted also with the looking how the economy is going, inflation is going, I wanted to help. So this, you buy it once and use it as much as you need. And each one comes with an optional score guide that gives you deeper insights into what your score means, plus helpful tips on what to do about it. So thank you very much for being here. Thank you, Melinda.
Thank you. That looks amazing. I have a girlfriend I'm just about to give that tool to. She's on top of my list.
Well, if you can use it, because there are 3 tests. One looks at relationship alignment, so it's looking at an imbalance. The other one is called Why Do I Feel So Bad? So it looks at relationships that may have toxic elements in them. And the third looks at work relationships. So they're the cost of a takeaway of a pizza delivery. And again, you won't find something like this that doesn't require you to come back to the professional to get the answer on what your score means, or they make each time you want to look at something, they make you pay for it again. There's nothing like this out here. So if you know someone who can use this, if you could use it yourself, please go to themcmillanmethod.com and get your own copy. So thank you so much, Melinda. I know you're so busy. I can't believe you're such a good friend. Thank you.
I love these shows, though. I mean, it's I get a lot out of them too. So it works both ways. See, it's like a balanced relationship.
There you go. There you go. So I will see you all next Tuesday for episode 99, and get ready because we're going to try to have something exciting for episode 100. So have a wonderful rest of the week, and I will see you all next time.